Hey listeners, you might hear some light snoring in the background through this entire episode. That is my dog. My dog had a very long day. He was an extremely good boy at the dog park, and he was too deep asleep before we started recording for me to kick him out of my office. So that is my puppy snoring. Happy ASMR.
Oh, Christ. Here we go. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I have a nuclear core.
And this week, we're canceling the apocalypse as we watch the 2013 kaiju fight-in action film Pacific Rim. Before we plug our brains into an alien hive mind, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod, or just, telling folks about us. Word of mouth, baby. Just let folks know, honestly. We're great.
Yeah, I haven't said this on air, I don't think, but I did tweet about it on our Mortified Pod account, but I did run into a listener at a wedding, which was very funny, and we did interrogate and make sure that this wasn't some sort of, acquaintance thing. No, somebody told their friend they might like our podcast, and we happened to be talking about fun podcasts that no one listens to, and I jokingly alluded to this one, and a person standing next to me goes, I think I'm subscribed to that, and they showed me the preview image, and it is in fact this podcast. So specifically, if you live in the Indiana area or have friends that are in the Indiana area, that could surprise Aaron with the same feeling of just not knowing how to respond to a situation, please do tell them about this wonderful podcast.
Yeah, if you come up to me and say, hey, I listened to your podcast, you will get a survey. I will be interrogating every aspect of how you found my program, but thank you so much for those of you who listen. We do very much appreciate our extremely small listener base. So thank you all, and we hope to reward you with a very good episode. Leyla, have you ever seen Pacific Rim before?
Yes, but I completely forgot every single thing about it. Have you?
I saw it once, in late 2013, 2014. I remember just watching it on the floor of my parents', house, and just being like, I don't get this movie. But in the fucking 8 years prior, I was like, oh, I get this movie now.
Yeah, it's much like any Guillermo del Toro vehicle. It is an acquired taste, but baby, I've acquired it.
Yeah, no, maybe it's just a thing where, it ages very well. And actually, I don't know that this film ages great, but there are enough parts of it that do work really, really well that I had a great time. And we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the kaiju. So, Leyla, do you want to try to run down the plot of this film?
Yeah, sure. So we open up on a pair of brothers who are pilots of these giant robots called Jaegers, which is German for hunter, as the intro tells you. And the whole thing is that Earth has been invaded by an alien life that is coming out of a dimensional rift under the ocean, and they're big Godzilla-like creatures called kaiju. So in the kaiju war, these two brothers pilot a robot whose name in the film is a slur. So we're going to be calling it Lady Danger.
Yes. Shout out to YouTuber Lady Night the Brave, who made a great video essay about this movie, which prompted this episode, which I will link in the show notes. But yeah, we're taking her name and calling their robot Lady Danger. So heads up.
Within this battle with Lady Danger, one of the brothers, while they are in something called the drift, which is when the two co-pilots of the giant robot, they sync up their brains and they're inside each other's heads. One of the brothers dies. So while they are connected, the brother that stayed alive got to feel and see everything his brother was seeing as he died. So 5 years later, he is working on the coastal wall, which is like the other solution as the Jaeger program has been decommissioned. And as everyone who's working on the wall watches one of these kaiju bust through another wall in another area in less than an hour, Raleigh, who is the main character, the survived brother, gets contacted by Idris Elba, who I did not recognize because he was wearing a mustache, to come back and be another kaiju pilot again. As he's coming back, he needs another co-pilot, and he meets Mako Mori, who is the person in charge of, the woman in charge of finding him a new co-pilot. Through a very fun training montage, it turns out they should be co-pilots. They are drift compatible because, as Aaron writes in our outline, she is the only other person with enough trauma to be drift compatible with him. They do have some struggles. They figure it out eventually. Meanwhile, there's a side plot where Charlie Day, as a dumbass gay scientist, drifts with one of these Godzilla creatures. And basically, they find out that their plot to, like, go and sink a giant nuke into the, what is referred to as the throat, which is, like, the dimensional opening.
It's a doggy door.
It's a doggy door. It's not going to work because it's, as Aaron says, a doggy door. Like, it only lets a kaiju in. A person won't fit through it. There's a big battle. Idris Elba and a rude Australian sacrifice themselves to give Rayleigh and Mako enough time to destroy the rift. And there's like a lot of really great big robot battles. The scientists are very gay, and it's a fantastic little time. Did I get it?
Yes, absolutely perfect. Crushed it. No notes. Yeah, I mean, this is a very fun movie, and we'll talk about the ways in which it's fun and, you know, the ways in which it works for us. But I think the strength of this movie, actually, besides the cool monster fights, is its characters and its very effective characterization and the use of its plot devices to help enhance characterization. Mm-hmm. So let's start with our protagonist, Raleigh. Do you have any, off-the-cuff thoughts about him?
I'm, as I just pointed out with the Idris Elba thing, really bad at faces. Can you confirm for me that in the brother intro, he's the fun brother?
Yes, that was my understanding. He is like the cool younger brother who's very excited to go kill kaiju.
Yeah, okay, so it is, when you have these openings where it's like a pair of people and one of them dies to like establish a little bit of trauma for the main character, it's very rare that the fun one survives. Like, it's usually the grouchy one that lives, and then they get more reason to be more grouchy. But I really like that it is the fun one that survives. And like, yeah, he's traumatized, and like, yeah, he's upset about his brother dying, and like, he has a lot of reservations about going back to be a Jaeger pilot again. But he does still retain like a pretty durable sense of humor, and he's just generally like a nice guy. Like, there's none of this asshole genius vibe about him at all. I really like him. I thought he was like a fun. He had a lot of characteristics of like a shonen protagonist, and you know how much I love that. He was just like a fun, positive force in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it works in his favor, right? There's not a lot of very dour dudes, despite the fact that this is kind of a sad, scary premise. Like, everybody is kind of upbeat, even though maybe they're melodramatic. They are all very optimistic, which I think is very useful. They are facing these relentless odds, and Raleigh, literally felt his brother die, and piloted the Jaeger back, and has all this extreme emotional weight on his shoulders, but he's still a very interesting protagonist. He's very upbeat and ready to fight despite all the odds are being stacked against them, and it really comes through with his relationship with Mako and how he's willing to like help her and guide her and also like be friends with her. So I really liked Raleigh. Mako, I feel like, so let's start with the second thing that did not age well about this movie, which is that Mako is very much an Asian woman with streaks in her hair. She's got 2 blonde streaks, and like, frankly, I don't even know that much about this trope, except that it is a trope for some reason in Western media to put an Asian woman with streaks in their hair. Do you know much about that, Leyla?
I don't really get what that's about. I never like did any research into the trope aside from like knowing that it's a trope, and to me it does feel like it's one of those things. It's like trying to combat the fact that Asian people have always been depicted as like studious. So this is like a rebellious Asian person, you know, this is like a fun Asian person, which is, you know, I like the blue streaks. I just don't like them as a pattern.
Yeah. I think it does very much fall into the, you know, trying to distinguish an Asian person who, you know, and I mean, it was probably and still is very common to depict Asian people as not very fun, you know, serious, academically minded, and not humorous. So to show somebody, you know, with a streak of quote unquote individuality, is a way to characterize them and make them more palatable to Western audiences, which is of course kind of, you know, boring. Asian people are, like all other people, diverse and have different opinions and different personalities. So we don't really need to color our hair to do that, but sure, whatever. You know, I don't think it is a relic of its time, unfortunately. But I don't, you know, despite that, I think that is probably the you know, most iffy part of Mako's characterization. Besides that, I think she's pretty cool. You know, she is introduced as, you know, speaking with Stacker Pentecost, who is of course Idris Elba. By the way, his name's Stacker Pentecost, which owns bones. But Mako, you know, is speaking to him in Japanese, and she's like, "Oh, I thought this guy who pilots Lady Danger would be, you know, better, would be different." And he responds also in Japanese. Raleigh does, like, different in a good or a bad way. And you know, it's kind of like a funny joke, like, oh, he knows Japanese. And like, that's, you know, it could be looked at as like, oh, it's a joke that, like, yeah, the white guy knows this Asian language, and, you know, he's not your average white guy. But I do think that the way that the movie portrays the relationship of these two characters, it's very much not adversarial and more like building trust, and you know, having things in common with each other. So I liked Mako. I think that the sequence where she fights Raleigh and they learn that they're drift compatible is very good, right? They're doing this like stick combat thing where, you know, the person who quote unquote like hits the other person 4 times, you know, is the winner, and they have this very close match where they're, you know, both like doing these cool stick fights basically, and they're neck and neck, and at the end, you know, it's very clear that they're extremely compatible, and they have this like fun counting game where it's like, oh, 1-0, you know, 1-1, 2-0, you know, and like they go back and forth, and it's really cool, and it does give her a lot of characterization. Like, you know, she's tough and smart, and she even says, like, when he's training all the other people that just aren't the same, she's like, oh, you should have. She's like, yeah, no, you're actually holding back. You could have taken them a couple moves earlier. And he's like, oh, you can do better. And they have this cool fight. And I really liked that. You know, I think that unfortunately she doesn't get as much characterization as I would liked. I would have liked a lot more of her interiority. But on the whole, I'm really happy with Mako Mori as a character.
Yeah, for 2013, they did a pretty fucking good job. You know, the whole Raleigh speaking Japanese thing bothered me on first look, but then once Pentecost also did it, I'm like, okay, it's an international program. Like, it kind of makes sense that the candidates have like international cooperation. They're like multilingual, you know, whatever. Sure. There was enough world building there for me to be like, fine, you know. I do wish she got more to do in the end. Like you said, I wish there was more about her, like, interiority. So I definitely agree with all of that. Listen, that little training sequence they have with the sticks that you were talking about, that was very sexy. I don't know about anybody else, but I was watching that with bated breath. It was great because, first of all, he invited her to get her ass kicked, which was great. And there was none of this, like, you're a girl, you think you could do better.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was just as equals, baby. He was like, oh, you think you could do better? Come fucking fight me. Pick up a stick, take off your shoes, let's fucking go. Mm-hmm. And they put her in this delightful tank top, which was great. And then they were, like, counting blows, you know, like keeping score between each other. And there was a point at which they stopped counting, and, like, my body seized. I was like, this is, like, peak battle couple this is the apex of sexiness to me. Like, it was fantastic. It was one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema, I think. And it was one of those points in the film where I was watching it, and you read my notes. There were like 4 times I was like, do I like this movie? Do I love this movie? Because it just, I don't know, it was so not memorable to me when I first watched it. Now I'm like, this is one of my favorite things in the world.
Excellent. We should also note that, Raleigh has this big traumatic backstory with his brother being eaten. Mako's big traumatic backstory is that her parents were killed by a kaiju. And her whole thing is trying to get revenge on the kaijus for killing her family. And it's later revealed that she is technically, or no, she's not technically, she is the adopted daughter of Stacker Pentecost, Marshall Stacker Pentecost, the Idris Elba, the guy who is leading the Jaeger program. And they have a very interesting relationship as well. It is very much falling into father-daughter tropes, but I think it still works. And, there's a lot of respect between the two of them. Like, there is even a point where, Raleigh's like, why don't you stand up to Stacker Pentecost? Like, basically, she's just like, I don't want to stand up. I don't want to like argue with Stacker Pentecost because I respect him, not because I'm afraid of him. And I think that was really, really key and nice. And eventually they do get to a point where he feels comfortable letting her get in Lady Danger and fight kaiju. But I just, Idris Elba does such a good job in this role. He's very much like a strict, military dad guy, but also like very eager and knows the value of what he's fighting for and in believing in his troops, even though nobody ever listens to his orders. He's always like, just stick with the coast and protect people, and everyone's like, no, we're gonna go save individual people because that's what we do, because we're the heroes. And he's like, god damn it. But like, I think he does a great job. I think he is dramatic in the way that this movie needs somebody to be melodramatic and over the top. And just like, it was recently announced that Idris Elba is going to be playing Knuckles in the Sonic movie sequel. Like, I love this fucking dude. Like, he's been everything from Cats to Stacker Pentecost, which is so cool. I love Idris Elba. He kicks ass.
Yeah, listen, you and I have both seen Cats 2019, and it is an experience. And Idris Elba is a highlight. Idris Elba and Jennifer Hudson are just lights in the darkness of Cats. I agree. I think he did a fantastic job in this role. Once I fucking recognized him after the movie ended, and I was looking at IMDb, and I was like, that's Idris Elba! I'm just terrible
Listen,
at
the
faces.
fake mustache disguise works.
I just have like selective face blindness or something, because guess who I also didn't recognize for an hour and a half? Charlie Day.
Yeah, how did you feel about Newt and Herman, the scientists?
My God, I love them so fucking much. I think Charlie Day should be more unhinged scientists in fun sci-fi flicks. I think he does a great job. I think he's a fantastic little kaiju fanboy. And or kaiju groupie was how they refer to him in the movie. He's great. He's like a little unhinged and desperate to be right, and I love that shit. And then you have Herman, who is just, what does he say? He says that numbers are as close as we get to the handwriting of God, which is just so fucking good.
It's incredible.
It's an incredible line. So you have this like dorky mathematician and this like unhinged kind of like a rock and roll will do anything scientist, and they're a great little pair of side characters. Buddy is it gay to share the neural load with a scientist you proclaim to hate, just to kind of both be right and to also maybe save his life?
Yeah, no, it's not gay at all, wanting to be both physically and psychically connected to a man that you have very strong emotional feelings towards in order to achieve a shared goal of saving the world in a moment of passion. That is the most platonic heterosexual thing I could ever conceive of.
Mm-hmm. And then is it also gay to run into the control room of the mission that you guys are running and both grip the microphone together and like talk in synchronicity to these pilots that are underwater. I just really love their relationship. I think it's excellent. It's really good.
It's really fun. They do a great job. Charlie Day is a little bit hit and miss for me, but I really like his unhinged scientist in this one, and I think it's fun. Like, there's a very good bit where he's first introduced to Raleigh, and Raleigh looks down at his tattoos and he's like, "Oh, you have this kaiju tattooed on your arm. Me and my brother killed that in 2017. And he's like, "Yeah, no, it was so cool. I loved that. That kaiju was so great and fun and terrible." And then he like takes a beat and he's like, "Or, scary and awful and the worst thing ever, definitely." and Herman's just like, "Shut the fuck up, idiot."
Yeah, he's I tried watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's just like not my thing at all. Like I don't know. It just like makes me uncomfortable, honestly. I don't find it very funny. But like, I don't know. I thought he was very fun in this movie because he's just like lightly unhinged. My favorite part with him was when he marched back into, Ron Perlman, who played Hannibal Chow, marched back into Hannibal Chow's hideout and was like, "You owe me a kaiju brain, you son of a bitch." It's really good.
Yeah, it kicks ass. Also, there's also, one last pair of people, which are the two Australians, Chuck and Herc Hansen. I believe...
Chuck? No. Maybe?
Chuck is the son and Herc is the dad, yes.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say I'm completely fine with referring to them as son and dad Hansen. So how did you feel about good old Chuckleby?
I hate Chuck so much. He's such a prick. And that's intentional, right? He, your first introduction to him is him on TV being like, "Yeah, no, the Jaeger program was only decommissioned because of mediocre pilots. I'm a great pilot, and I of course could kill all the Jaeger, or not the Jaegers, the kaiju by myself because I kick ass. That's directly an affront to Raleigh, and he, multiple times will get in a fight with Raleigh. In fact, there's a big fight where he insults Mako, and then Raleigh like goes and kicks his ass because he's just a shitty dude. But I think the very interesting thing is the relationship between Chuck and Herc, because Herc, his dad is like, "Yeah, my son does suck. I'm fully aware of that. Sorry about him, but he is my co-pilot. What are you gonna do?"
Yeah. When Raleigh punched Herc in the face, it was so satisfying. I bodily went, "Ooh!" It was so good. Yeah. I mean, like, you love to hate him, right? He's a good character, but he sucks. And there's more than enough room for that in this franchise. I do think it's very interesting, like, as we're talking about all these characters, and we'll get into their relationships a little bit more, but I think it is interesting that they're all deliberately paired off. Like, there's never really a group dynamic between any of them, right? There's not, even in terms of like Mako and Stacker and Raleigh, you never get much more than Raleigh standing in the back of a shot, maybe talking about Stacker to Mako. There's not really a dynamic between the three of them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And same with like any other members of the cast. Like, it's all very paired off all the time, which I think is a very interesting way to tell a story.
Yeah, I think the most interesting intersection of characters is where Chuck, the son, the Australian son, and Stacker end up piloting their mech at the very end. It's such a strange choice, right? And they even address that. They're like, "Yeah, I mean, Stacker's like, well, you are a rude baby boy with daddy issues, so I think I'm pretty drift compatible with you. I got you figured out." And like, they're like, "Okay, sure, whatever." And, I do think the world building falls apart at times. Like, this movie doesn't care too much about its own logic, which, I think is actually to its benefit because it's just kind of a fun film. But like, there are some bits where it's like, we just established that it's very hard to be drift compatible, but it's fine. That's kind of how I come down on a lot of this film's logic. It's like, does that make sense? No, but it's fine. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that they justified it in universe was Idris Elba said, "I take nothing into the drift," which I thought was kind of a badass thing to say. Like, he's so practiced that he just like, he's just there. Yeah. He can be present with anyone, which honestly, I think makes sense with what he says to Raleigh at one point, which is, all I have to be for you guys is a fixed point. I'm not your father, I'm not anything, I'm just a fixed point. So I think it does flow with his characterization, but like you said, there is so much about this movie that makes no goddamn sense, and that's fine, baby. There's a 3-armed robot elbowing dinos into the sea. They say that the kaiju are dinosaurs that tried to come and take Earth once, and then they were like, nah, not yet. Waited until we terraformed it for them, and then came. This is nonsense. I love it. More.
It's great. It kicks ass. It's incredible. And like, I think that nonsense is something I wanted to talk about because, like, is this camp? Leyla, what's camp? What does camp mean?
Oh boy. Okay, so camp, I know there's like actual definitions for camp, but like it's so hard to boil down. Camp is it's Rocky Horror, right? Camp is melodrama. Camp is over the top. Camp is just like intentional clownery. If you look at the Met Gala from 2017, one of those years, the assignment was camp and not everyone got it. Camp is Billy Porter being carried in by 6 shirtless hunks while wearing all gold as the sun god Ra. You know what I mean? Like, it is so over the top, and like, so if the whole movie was that numbers are as close as we get to the handwriting of God line, if that was the entire film, that would be camp. I think there are campy moments in this movie. I don't think the whole entire production was camp.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That does actually help me clear up a lot of definitional problems. But, you know, I think it's understandable why I asked that question, because like we've been alluding to, this whole film has this very melodramatic air, and there are these big character moments and speeches and bits. I do think that there is, you know, this movie has this weight, this melodramatic over-the-top flair that I was like, I think Leyla will like this because of how big the swings it takes are. And it seems like I was right on the money, and I'm very pleased about that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when Lady Danger picked up that fucking boat and used it as a sword, I was bought in. And that's camp. Using a boat as a sword, I would classify that in this context is camp. That's just so, dragging that thing behind that giant robot just to fucking take that monster out. Absolutely. The entire character of Hannibal Chow, I would say, at least borders on camp. You know, there's just really great. I think, honestly, Herman finding that random toilet to puke into in the debris pile, I would call that camp. But this goes into, like, honestly, the thing you were talking about with the like casual melodrama, that's like a very Del Toro thing to do. And in the outline, you do have something about Del Toro's Monster Corner, which I think is a great time to get into because, first of all, you know, I don't know. I'm very against auteur culture. Like, I don't think that a single person is responsible for any creative project. So I just want to put it out there that, like, yes, Guillermo del Toro is a very specific vision. And when we talk about Del Toro's monsters, I just want to acknowledge that, like, teams of people go into bringing these things to life. Like, teams of incredibly talented artists whose input is very valuable go into making these monsters. Because in my house, we credit and we pay artists, god damn it. So but as we're just going to be talking about like Del Toro's like vision for his monsters, right? So I think you pointed out something very interesting in our notes, which is to say that like there's this like category system for these kaiju, right? Kind of like hurricanes. It's like category 1, and then at the end you meet like the 4s are like crazy. The 4s are like wild. The 4s are dangerous, and there's 2 4s, and you're like, holy shit. And then there's a category 5. Cat 5 wasn't, like, physically all that much, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of I was a little disappointed on second watch of this because I was like, you know, they're supposed to be having this big buildup, and like the Category 5 monster is like a little bit taller than the other ones and doesn't have like any cool weapons. Like there's one that has an EMP. Like I thought that was much scarier than this Cat 5 at the end. So yeah, that was one criticism I have of the film, is that like, you know, Del Toro is famous for his monster design. But like these ones all I felt were a little samey, unfortunately. Like there's a lot of big horns and ridges and like jaws that open and hinge on like 6 different places, and that's cool and I love it. But yeah, I was wanting a little bit more. And you know, but I do think it's important that we talk about Del Toro, because like he makes monstrosity such a part of his, you know, of his oeuvre. Like the Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth is a famous example. You know, the big white humanoid with eyeballs on their hands that like chases the girl around, like that. You know, that's an iconic monster. You know, The Shape of Water. You have the fish man, the sexy fish man. You know, and I don't think we get as much of his like philosophy, which is like monsters are the ways that we look at the marginalized, and like he tries to say interesting things about the ways that his monsters are portrayed and what makes them monstrous versus what's, you know, what is actually monstrous. You know, if you've seen Pan's Labyrinth, you know the real monster is not all the, you know, weird fairies and shit running around. But like. Yeah, I do wish we had a little bit more here, but I mean, just like from a straight up cool factor, I thought they were like kind of perfect for just like, oh, big, scary, terrible things that roll up and do a lot of damage. I thought they served their purpose well.
Yeah, so I think it's funny because Pacific Rim for me fits into a Del Toro subgenre, which is monsters almost for the sake of monsters, or monsters as vehicle for the exploration of intimacy, not so much monsters as a contrast to the monster of man. But then there's also the Del Toro subgenre of monsters as exploration for the intimacy of humanity, which not only Pacific Rim fits into, but also the Troll Hunters franchise, which is Troll Hunters, Three Below, Wizards, and now there's a feature film called Rise of the Titans. And so the 4 things that go into that franchise. Very good animated DreamWorks franchise that is a Del Toro vehicle, and it's 3 separate stories that are all kind of conjoined. So there's one about the troll hunter Jim Lake, there's one about these 2 alien siblings, and then there's one about Merlin's assistant, which I think is very fun. But in that franchise also, the monsters, there's no real monster of man. It takes that kind of like children's media pathway of like almost everyone is redeemable by love and friendship. So like even the villains, a lot of the villains become not villains, and the villains that are villains are like very villainous, you know, in like a very frank, very upfront way. So it's the monstrosity in that and in Pacific Rim very much becomes this like almost backdrop to semi-realisms to say like, okay, well, we have our planet, here's this drastic change, which is to say the presence of monsters. So there's just enough magical realism and suspension of disbelief to say like, okay, so in this world, certain pressures exist that are otherworldly, and how can we use that to push the bounds of like friendship, love, and intimacy? You know what I mean? So it's like still real, it's still us, and there's no like real human monstrosity, but there is this like new pressure by way of story, this new like requirement to dig in deeper, which is I think where Pacific Rim falls on the like Del Toro spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to, you know, just talk about the drift, right? Like the drift is the thing that they used to, you know, the monsters necessitate the implementation of the neural handshake that drives the Jaegers, that drives the ability to link with the kaiju brain, right? The existence of monsters, the kaiju, forces humanity to, you know, realize that you know, friendship and you know, working together in a very intimate way is the only way that we are going to overcome these supernatural existential challenges that we face. And, we see it in Raleigh and Mako, them both overcoming their background trauma by learning to trust each other and getting in each other's head, with Chuck and Herc, right? We see this father-son relationship that, they are very rude to each other, or, Chuck is rude to everyone and Herc is, disappointed in his son, but also they share this mind meld. So they also know that, like, whatever happens between them, they still love each other fundamentally, which is, that, like, despite the fact that I hate Chuck so much, like when he goes off with Stacker Pentecost to die in the final mission, Herc is like, I don't want to leave anything unsaid, even though we've all, you share my mind in the drift. And Chuck's just like, don't say it. I already know. And it was heartbreaking, but also, very profound. And I really liked that bit, and then of course, Newt and Herman are extremely queer-coded scientists who, are struggling to prove each other wrong, but then come together to realize that the best thing they can do for humanity is to go merge with this kaiju consciousness and understand what their final plan is. Those are all necessitated by the monsters putting pressure on us. And I think, the drift itself is a very interesting and useful narrative device, because it allows us to not only literally see into the memories of our characters, but also it helps us understand their motivations and their relationships with each other in a very clear and reasonable way, and a way that resonates with me, at least as an audience member.
Yeah, and I mean, the drift compatibility, I guess, selection too is always interesting. So like we talked about Pentecost earlier, how he doesn't bring anything into the drift and can kind of interface with everyone, because he is like the fixed point of the collective. But I also found the fact that he never interfaces with Mako very interesting, because they have a very intimate relationship without the forced connection of the drift, which is really cool. As Pentecost gears up to go into the final confrontation, and Mako obviously wants to protect him. She doesn't want her dad to die. He says, "I will always be there for you. You will always find me in the drift." Baby, that got me. It's
an incredible line.
It's this movie is wild time, but it does occasionally hit you real hard, right in the kokoro.
Yeah.
But as we talk about the drift, are we ready to talk about who we would be drift compatible with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll go first, which is to say, basically only my wife. I don't think there's literally anyone I would feel comfortable, letting in my mind. And being able to see that level of my own personal, problems and aspirations and, things that I don't particularly like about myself. The thing about, living with somebody for 5 years now, and being in a relationship with them for 10 is that, whether or not Sierra is literally psychically connected to me, she already knows all the bad shit going on here. So, I think that is the level of emotional intimacy I would need to allow somebody to be physically, mentally connected to me. But I think that you had some very, very interesting thoughts on drift compatibility in your notes.
Yeah, fucking no one. Can't think of a single person I have some fantastic friends, right? I have some very close friends, very, very tight friends who I would sacrifice anything for and do anything for. Love them to death. No, you can't go in my head. Absolutely not. Are you fucking kidding me? I would die. I would sooner die. If they were like, "Hey, Leyla, suit up," I'd be like, "No." Just I can't.
Bye, Earth. I can't deal with this today.
Nope, I can't do it. It just, man, I complain about the mortifying ordeal of being known kind of like all the time, because I hate it. I get uncomfortable when people predict things about me. Like even you saying like, oh, I think you would like Pacific Rim. I'm like, oh,
you don't know me like that. Excuse you.
Excuse you. How dare you know me? I tend to reflexively self-isolate whenever things get a little too intimate. That's why I don't have a ton of friends. I have a lot of acquaintances. That's why I'm perpetually single, because the moment anybody shows any interest in me, I fucking run. I wish I was joking. I'm not. I flee. I start to ghost people because they like me. Like, I can't think of a single person who I could be like, yeah, get in my brain. Get in here. Fucking check out how much I hate myself. Like, it's just, I can't. This movie made me think about a lot of things, and none of them were good.
But I mean, like, I think that's kind of what the movie is trying to say, right? Like, isn't there something about just, like, being connected to other people, you know, in a very deep and personal way, being the only way to save, you know, not only the world, but each other and ourselves? You know, I think that is kind of a nice sentiment.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's not a nice sentiment. Mr. Del Toro, that's kind of his brand, you know what I mean? Like, he does a lot of that, like, friendship can save anything, love can save anything. Even if it's not, like, the best objective ending, there is something that gets saved. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, obviously if there were, like, giant fucking Godzillas coming out of the goddamn ocean and somebody was like, Leyla, for some godforsaken reason, we think you should get in a big robot and go do punch. I would be like, fine. I'm sure I'd figure it out. I'm sure we'd have lots of wonderful, intimate talks and build a beautiful trust, and it would be beautiful. But I think that, I mean, as you were kind of outright saying, that is kind of the point of the movie, is like this exploration of needing intimacy and trust and friendship to, like, get through a crisis like this. Especially with the fact that Del Toro sets up the, like, commercialization and commodification of the kaiju crisis in the beginning of the film. Like, there's a whole opening dedicated to the fact that, like, a ton of lives were lost, and then all of a sudden there's, like, kaiju toys and Jaeger toys. Like, people are just taking this entire crisis for granted now, and then flipping that on its head to be like, okay, it's been commodified and then it got worse, and the only thing that solved it was, like, unrestrained trust, unconditional love. Like, that is the thing that got these pilots through this crisis, right? And even in terms of, like, Raleigh and Mako, who I mean, like, it is text, you know, that they kind of, like, start to fall in love, and there's a lot of, like, romantic tones in their interactions. They never, like, kiss or anything, but that forehead touch at the end of that fucking movie, Raleigh's saying, what does he say? He says, I never thought about the future until now. I always did have terrible timing. I'm like, son, propose. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So it's this movie, like, founded on all sorts of relationships, paternal to children relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. It's, you know, I made jokes about Herman and Newt being queer-coded, which, like, they are. But, you know, that is supposed to be, like, a friendship that is just extremely powerful, though they are gay, but it's supposed to be a friendship. You know, it's that is being posited as the anathema to capitalism, which I think is great. It's a fantastic little film. I loved it a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. I get why it was super popular on Tumblr in, like, 2014, you know? So yeah, but myself personally, I'd sooner put a bullet in my head than drift.
Well, good news, Leyla, is that in the sequel, Uprising, they introduced single-piloted Jaegers. So if you were part of the, you know, second class of Jaeger pilots, when you can solo pilot a Jaeger, let's talk about what your own
Wait a minute.
Jaeger...
Wait, what? Hold on. I was with you for a second, and then I realized what you actually said. But the point is that there's supposed to be two.
Yeah, but there is one that you can solo. It's listen, the sequel has some good moments, but it is complicated. We won't talk about it here. Again, go watch Lady Night the Brave's essay that does cover the sequel in the show notes.
Great, I will be doing that after the recording because I am confused.
It's good. So I wanted to talk about what I would like to have out of my own Jaeger if I did have some Jaeger that I could pilot. And I thought about, because they introduced 4 Jaegers in this film. We didn't talk about the Russian one and very much, but it's very much like a very Soviet era, like big blocky, nuclear big robot, which is very fun. But I thought about the main influences that I have, main cultural influences on my life. And I was like, well, Catholicism, definitely, and also not being a white person. And initially I wanted to go with, Shiva from Hinduism, but I thought that was a little disingenuous. I am not a Hindu, though I've read some Hindu texts. I don't know that I can claim that heritage, really. So instead I went with a Jaeger that I am titling Merlion Martyrdom, which is very cool, to reference the famous Merlion of Singapore, which is where my mom is from. Singapore's National Day was recently, so happy birthday, Singapore. But like, I think it would be very fun to have a robot that either has a lion head or like has a plasma cannon that turns into a lion head. And also maybe a big, mermaid tail, like that I could use to like counter kaiju tails, and then also some very Catholic shit, like big stupid wings. Maybe my wings would shoot missiles or have their engines in there, and then just like a big lance, like a big holy lance, like the Lance of Longinus, to cite another mech-based program. But I think that would be extremely fun. Maybe I could have a halo, and like a halo shield. That would be very fun. But yeah, this movie makes me wish I could draw, so I could draw my own mech OCs and have my mech OC fight different kaiju. That'd be sick as hell. What would your Jaeger be?
I guess if we're talking about the cultural influences that we've grown up under, like, I wish I could say, like, yeah, I would do this, like, big, like, Slavic folk presentation, which I'm sure there would be influences. I'd love like a big Kakloma painted shield. I think I would have a shield. I think I would run defense, if I were drift compatible with a person. I think we would do defense, just a big, big, beautiful shield. I would go full Final Fantasy. I want shit on there that looks like belts. I want those like swords that fold out, and I want them to, like, 4 of them around the waist of this bot, so I can just pick them, and just do like a double-handed thing. Like, I want the full Nomura experience, you know what I mean? And like, just, maybe one of them was like wrapped around twice and it turns into a fucking lance or some shit.
Oh, hell yeah.
That would be dope as hell. And like a big circle headdress to look like those Orthodox portraits of like Jesus.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a big Green Knight style, like, headpiece crown thing with like that turns like a big collar, like a Cloud or Vincent from Final Fantasy VII. Like, I want like a big neck cuff thing. I think my robot would be nuclear powered, because I'm picturing like a big, bulky, beautiful iron, kind of like a Lady Danger, just like a real
reactor
hunk
in
of
the
a
center.
bot.
Yeah.
Abso-fucking-lutely, my guy.
Your mech is the trope of where like somebody is going into a guarded place and they're like, okay, take out all your weapons, and your mech's like, okay, and it hands like one sword and they're like, no, all your weapons, and then your mech is like, ugh, and then just like shakes for 5 minutes as various blades and belts and hidden guns just fall out of it into the ocean.
For some reason, there's just like a Leaf Village shuriken somewhere, just like for fun,
Yes, fucking Naruto falls out of your mech. Just a whole ninja.
Just a whole ninja boy. I don't know about a name. I was trying to think of something like Slavic, but I can't really think of anything significant enough. But maybe I would just call it like Diaspora's Edge.
Oh, that's good. I love that.
Do fucking that shit. Yeah, it would. And when I say shield, I do mean as tall as the bot.
Oh yeah, like a tower shield for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think that would be my Jaeger.
Oh god. Now, in order to fund these robots that we will be building, we have to remarket. In the Mortified Marketing Minute, we have to remarket Pacific Rim, either as a reboot or maybe a new medium. I don't know how you would, want to do that, but what are your thoughts for making Pacific Rim, accessible to the audience of 2021?
I want you to go first because my solution is so elegant, so simple. It serves two beautiful purposes. So I just want to, I want you to have the floor.
So I definitely wanted to try a video game. I wonder what would a... I almost think a dating sim. I've been playing the recently released, what's it called? Boyfriend Dungeon. I've been playing that recently, and I've been thinking about dating sims and visual novels. And I think it would be very interesting to try something similar to that, like a combat, like light game with a lot of romance game elements. Like where you're trying to date various pilots in order to find out which one you are drift compatible with.
Yes.
And you can do training exercises with them to figure out what you do, and also you learn their backstory as you talk to them, and the final climax is you picking a pilot that you are drift compatible with, and doing one last big fight against a kaiju. I think that'd be extremely good.
Yes. I think that's excellent. I have a very simple, very beautiful, very elegant solution. I'm going to just market your dating sim, okay?
Okay.
And here's how we're going to do it. Elon Musk is planning to launch ad satellites to, have ads in space, right? So I think we can get Elon Musk to make those ads like holographic projectors. Mm-hmm. We project kaiju coming out of the ocean to market this dating sim. The projections go horribly wrong. There is a class action lawsuit against Elon Musk for scaring an entire city. That motherfucker goes to jail, and everybody plays your game. Win, motherfucking win.
We should try to make more of our marketing minutes try to target specific billionaires.
Yeah, Bill Gates, I'm coming for your ass.
William, you're next. God, Leyla, when we are not trying to cause the downfall of various wealth hoarding monsters, much worse than any kaiju from Del Toro's imagination, where can people find us on the internet?
Well, the problem is that's all I'm doing nowadays. But if you're looking for the remnants of what I was before I was radicalized, you can check out at LEYLSES on Twitter and Tumblr. And I am debating whether or not I'm going to write an essay this month. But I did edit a couple. So if you want to go reread my edits now that I'm not super stressed by the American elections, feel free to check those out. Aaron, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I tweet about writing, TTRPGs, unfortunately still healthcare, because our healthcare system's still a mess, but I don't tweet I don't tweet mean things on my professional Twitter, but I do tweet those mean things on my normal Twitter, so there's that. You can listen to the other podcasts I do at The Bible Boys on Twitter. We just released an episode about the History Channel TV show Battles BC, their episode on Joshua and the Siege of Jericho, which was very fun. Michael was drunk, and Josh was doing it on their bed. So it was just a wholly unhinged episode that I did turn into an animatic, which was fun. So please check that out if any of that appeals to you. You should also know that our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, our listeners are going to be very sad because they're not going to be able to hear us for another week. And to comfort them, what should we let them know?
You can always find us in the drift.
We'll see you all next time.